President Barrow extends state of public emergency for another 7 days, marking the fourth time since the outbreak. Ghana's tourism industry is faced with adverse effects of the COVID-19. And Egypt has secured over $5 million loan from the International Monetary Fund to save the country's economy amid the global crisis. This and more coming on The World Today. His cabinet withdrew the motion for the same purpose from the National Assembly. The move comes in exercise of emergency powers conferred on the president by the 1997 Constitution. This proclamation reactivates all the COVID-19 emergency regulations issued under the Emergency Powers Act, according to a press statement from the presidency. This is the fourth time for the president to declare a state of public emergency since the outbreak of the COVID-19 in the country in March. The latest proclamation seeks to extend the just-ended second consecutive 21-day period of emergency declared by the head of state after the motion for extension was rejected by lawmakers in May 2020. The government gives assurances that all efforts are being made to contain the spread of the disease as it continues to monitor development within the ECOWAS region. And from that development, next we move to matters of the TRRC because the Truth and Reconciliation Commission on Wednesday arranged a reconciliation exercise of perpetrators and victims of human rights violations during the 22-year rule of former President Yahya Jammeh at a ceremony held at the Dunes Hotel in Kololi. Former Inspector General of Police Ensa Baji, well known as Jesus, forgave Soriba Konde, who confessed to have lied against him during a trial that led to the imprisonment of the former police chief. Mr. Soriba told the reconciliation body that what he had done was a mistake that he has regretted at heart and that he was seeking for forgiveness from Ensa Baji. The former IGP described the day as one he will never forget in his life, but that he has forgiven and no longer hold offense from Soriba Konde. He instead blamed the exiled former president for everything he had gone through, such as the incarceration and hardship from the prison.
I have forgiven Soriba wholeheartedly between myself and God. I've forgiven anybody who participated in my plot, in my torture, in my castration, and in my sentencing to jail, life, 35 years, 10 months. I've forgiven all of them. The target was to give me death. I could have been among the 9 inmates that were executed. That was the target, but I thank God. I've forgiven Soriba and everybody. Between myself and God, I'm a Muslim. Chairman, it is so painful being an Inspector General of Police. You are arrested, tortured, imprisonment on something that you've never seen, you've never known. Soriba's incident happened when I was an inspector 12 years ago, before I came an IGP. I served only 2 years plus. It wasn't easy. I faced a lot of difficulties. It is not his fault. The name he mentioned during TRC, Tony, when Tony was picked up, he lost one of his eyesight. When he was released, eventually he died. Things were so terrible in those days.
The former Inspector General of Police, Ensa Baji, there speaking. Now, from that, next we move on to not something else because the French President Emmanuel Macron has stated He reiterated his commitment to end the terrorism insurgents in Africa's Sahel region. He was speaking on Tuesday at the head of state of G5 Sahel Summit in the Mauritanian's capital, Nouakchott. President Macron said the fight against terrorism is decisive for both Europe and Africa, noting that there is every possibility to bring peace in the region.
Nous sommes en train d'en retrouver le chemin grâce aux efforts qui ont été faits ces 6 derniers mois.
All this demonstrates one thing. The alliance that we have announced in Port 6 months ago is in place. Europe and institutions like its member states, our partners and Americans, neighboring countries, they are all here. They are by your side because we have convinced them that victory is possible in the Sahel, which is decisive for the balance in Africa and in Europe. We are finding our way based on the efforts over the past few months. We have prepared many things. We have improved effectiveness in the fight against terrorism and information exchange, succeeded in our unique information center in Niamey, and we got spectacular results, especially in recent weeks.
En Europe. Nous sommes en train d'en retrouver le chemin grâce aux efforts qui ont été faits ces 6
French forces have been assisting regional countries since 2013 in their fight against a plethora of armed groups, including affiliates of Al-Qaeda and ISIL, or ISIS. And of course, from that, next we come back home because the Minister for Information and Communication Infrastructure, Ibrahim Sila, on Wednesday appeared before the National Assembly to respond to question on concern of national issue on issues of national development, and in response to the National Assembly member for Jimara, Sila defined the Gambia Radio and Television Services as a state broadcaster and national media institution with a mission to reach out to all communities within the length and breadth of the Gambian and beyond.
The GRTS has put in place an editorial policy which accords equal opportunities to all political parties since the dawn of the new era in the Gambia for news coverage. In terms of airtime allocation for political party broadcast or statements, it is executed in consultation with the Independent Electoral Commission, the IEC, during the election cycle, and GRTS will continue to do so to ensure fair play and in fulfillment of the wishes of the political parties and their supporters.
Gambia's Information Minister speaking there at the National Assembly in Banjul earlier on today. Now, as countries continue to navigate through the economic pressure brought about by the COVID-19 global pandemic, Egypt has secured a $5.2 million loan from the International Monetary Fund as a relief package. IMF has been providing financial bailout package for Africa as part of efforts to mitigate the impact of the global crisis. Authorities say the support will help the country's efforts to recover from the economic crisis. Here's more details of that in this report.
Since the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic, Egypt has been spending billions of dollars on keeping the economy afloat. According to the central bank, the foreign currency reserves had dropped by about $9 billion in the last 3 months alone. That's why the $5.2 billion IMF loan is essential to help Cairo sustain itself economically.
After the COVID, what we pursued a loan that is concessional, with no conditions and with very easy terms in terms of interest rate, the maturity, so a grant period, so you don't have to pay for 5 years or so. We were affected by the COVID implications in terms of fall in tourism revenues, Suez Canal revenues, worker remittances.
The central bank governor says Egypt will immediately receive $2 billion, with the remainder to be paid out in 2 tranches after staff refuse. Last May, Egypt received another $2.5 billion under the Rapid Financing Instrument. That brings the total amount loaned by the Bretton Woods institution to $8 billion.
I'm concerned about the debt, but we have to be realistic. Are there other options for a government that is trying to seek some more revenues, because we see the budget now. We have to spend on health. We have to spend on these COVID implications in terms of social protection schemes to protect the income of people. And at the same time, your revenues in the fiscal budget are lower than before.
Cairo is also expected to receive another $4 billion by tapping into the Eurobond market. The IMF loans wouldn't have come at a better time for Egypt, as experts hope it will help minimize the effects of the coronavirus on Egypt's economy.
And from the report there in Cairo, Egypt, we will now take a break and come back shortly with the remaining of the story. Stay with us, we'll be right back.
TRRC gannaaw bi ñu amee ndimbal ju bàyyeekoo ci mbootaayu àdduna ju faree wàllum transitional justice ak axu doomi aadama ñu xamee ko ci UNTJHR ñoo taxawal ndimbal ngir gën a yaatal ñun toroxal seen bokk ci wàllum sàkku dëgg ak liggéey TRRC bi ci wàllum gëstu ak joxe kàddu ci sutura wala ci mbooloo ji ndimbal nag dinañ ko joxe ngir yombal dem ak ñëw lekk ak naan wérdu yaram ak kaaraange ndimbal ji it dinañ ko jëfandikoo ngir jënd bagage ci wérdu yaram teg ci dimbale doomi Gambia yéen toroxal ngir ñu mën a fajoo bitim réew su dee seen soxla faju dafa jàmp ñu mën a jot ci biir ndimbal nag moo ñin musa toroxal ci seen ax ak ñu leen dee gunge suñuy joxe kàddu seede yi ñin tuumaal ci toroxal doomi aadama ak ñu jàppale TRRC bi ci wàllum jot dëgg képp ku bëgg a sàkku ji ndimbal koolal TRRC Victim Support Unit ci 77 04 988 wala ci 508 66 93 jërë ngeen jëf.
gaaw na te yomb na 2020 census bi nag du la jël ay waxtu yu bari pour nga jekkali ko kon nag na nga fexe ñu compter la yow ak say njaboot.
Welcome back, and you're watching the World Today News Bulletin Africa TV, and now to the rest of the stories. Now, the Ministry of Women and Children and Social Welfare, in partnership with the UNFPA and the Paradise Foundation, have initiated a national gender-based violence helping line during the launch of the 2020 World Population Report. The event on Tuesday was centered on the theme Define Practices that Harm Women and Girls. Details of that in this report by Aissatou Tamba.
Ministry of Women, Children and Social Welfare, in partnership with the United Nations Population Fund, UNFPA, and the Paradise Foundation on Tuesday launched the National Gender-Based Violence Helpline and the 2020 State of War Population Report. On the theme Against My Will, define the practices that harm women and girls and undermine qualities. The UNFPA pledged to protect the health and right of women and girls in the countries of their operation, including the Gambia. Statistics shows that thousands of girls have their health and right violated, with female genital mutilation and forced marriages among other major incidents. The Minister of Women, Children and Social Welfare, Fatou Kinte, said gender-based violence was one time considered as a family matter until the intervention of the institutionalized gender unit at the Gambia Police Training Academy in the country. The introduction of the gender-based violence in the curriculum, she said, has changed the way of violence against women and girls are being handled, with more than 200,000 cases were reported after the intervention. Colonel Adenie, the resident representative of the UNFPA, said the physical or mental harm as a result of gender-based violence is among factors responsible for depriving women and girls from achieving their dreams in life. The First Lady of the Gambia, Fatmata Barbaro, assured her office preparedness to provide all support necessary to the programs and initiatives meant to fight against gender-based violence in the country.
Underlying factors are mainly gender inequality, strict gender roles, and social norms affecting women in the Gambia. As a result, the government and other partners should work together to address these issues to enable women and girls to live a dignified lives and effective partake in national development.
This year brings a decade of action to achieve the Sustainable Development Goal of 2030, including the target of ending harmful traditional practices to protect millions of women and girls worldwide. Reporting for iAfrica News, I am Aissatou Tamba.
And from the report, next we head to Tunisia, and of course, and report on matters of irregular migration, because of course, irregular migration is still alive in the Tunisian source, despite the closure of ports and border crossings for the past 2 months due to the outbreak of the coronavirus. During this time of the year, thousands of people, including women and children, are tempted to cross the Mediterranean to Europe looking for greener pasture. But authorities are becoming more concerned of the situation as many people continue to lose their lives. Here's more details of that in this report.
The general lockdown has paralyzed international travel in Tunisia. All ports and border crossings have remained closed for more than 2 months, but irregular migration has not stopped. Migrant centers are hosting hundreds of individuals from sub-Saharan Africa, including women and children.
The general lockdown has made our lives harder. We do not have any financial means. Migration is the solution to find a job, earn a living and send money back home to our poor parents. We are well treated in Tunisia. We have food and shelter.
During this time of year, thousands of migrants are tempted to cross the Mediterranean. Good weather conditions and calm seas during the summer make it easier for migrants to make their way to Europe from the North African shores. Many people die during the long and perilous journey, while thousands reach the Italian island of Lampedusa. Hospitals in the coastal regions of Sfax and Mahdia have reported an increase in the number of migrant bodies they are receiving. But Tunisian authorities say that identifying them is difficult. The deceased migrants usually travel without any official documents. Therefore, putting a name on their gravestones and informing their families is near impossible.
Our role is to provide assistance to all migrants, without distinction. Young people lose their lives. The Tunisian legislation protects the rights of migrants, but condemns traffickers who are responsible for the tragedies at sea.
The municipality of Sfax has decided to dedicate a special section at the local cemetery to bury the migrants from sub-Saharan Africa who drowned while attempting to cross the Mediterranean. The victims deserve a decent human treatment and burial in individual graves.
The Tunisian Forum for Economic and Social Rights has revealed that more than 700 irregular Tunisian migrants reached the European coasts from February the 27th to June the 5th, 2020. During the same period, nearly 100 irregular migration operations were foiled, and nearly 900 Tunisian irregular migrants were prevented from crossing the maritime borders.
Irregular migration continues to be a global challenge, and from the report there in Tunisia, we come back home because in condemnation of the false publication and broadcasting charges levied against Gambian activists, the executive director of Mbekanya Kafo argued that the police has no leg to stand on. Madi Jabate had been charged under the criminal code but was subsequently released on bail for $50,000 and one Gambian sortie. More details of that in this report by Julden Jaiswara.
The executive director of Mbekanya Kafo has called on the police to drop what he called bogus charges levied against Madi Jabate and apologize for infringing in his rights. Speaking on the Good Morning Africa program on Tuesday, Mfamara Jaune said one cannot be arrested and charged anywhere in the world for merely expressing their opinion, saying it is unfortunate that such is happening in the New Gambia. The Westminster Foundation country representative was invited by police for questioning on Monday, few days after leading a Black Lives Matter protest, where he accused the government of failing to investigate instances of police brutality, including the deaths of 3 Gambians. In the view of Jaune, the police are using the same provision that the Jammeh government was using against Gambians, meant to silence them.
And therefore, as right advocates, we cannot just be calling for respect of human rights in the US and elsewhere in the world and ignore blatantly the human rights abuses and violations in our own backyard. We cannot do that. And therefore, Madi is entitled to his opinion, like any one of us. And for the fact that he is trying to hold government accountable, we have to applaud Madi for that. This is what we expect from every citizen of this country, to hold the government accountable, because that's what the 1997 Constitution provides for us to do as citizens, to hold the government accountable and have our opinions heard. And also, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights also makes the same provision for the citizens to have free access to information, freedom of opinion, and the like. So therefore, I just want to say that the police is just using the former tactics, the tactics of the former regime, of suppressing dissenting opinion, and therefore this is unacceptable in this country, especially in this new democracy that we call.
The human rights defendant, who described the situation as both funny and unfortunate, argued that the police have no case against Mr. Jobate, who he said is neither a journalist nor a publisher to be charged with false publication and broadcasting.
That definitely the way things were going at the time, we're happy with regards to freedom of expression, freedom of the media. But during the past 12 months, you can ask yourself, with all the things happen here, just a few days ago, a journalist was maltreated. You remember Pamodu Bojang and his media house and his colleagues at King FM. So Madi also expressing his opinion, even though he's not a journalist, but as a citizen. So all this is an attack on the freedom of the press and freedom of the media. So therefore, the situation for me at the beginning, it was improving, but I think now we are going back to old days of Jammeh. That's my honest opinion. And therefore, citizens have to speak up. We have to speak up against police brutality. We have to speak up against abuse of human rights in this country as citizens.
On the side of the security sector reform, Mr. Jaune argued that there has not been much progress considering the current operation manual of the security apparatus in the country. For iAfrica News, I am Julden Jaisware.
And from the report there by Julden Jaisware, of course, as you heard, next, of course, we head to Ghana, because the Ghana's tourism industry has been brought to its knees due to the impact of the COVID-19 crisis. Like many other sectors, industry has been largely affected due to the limited activities within the sector. The government promised to provide support for the affected businesses. The country's tourism authorities estimated over $100 million lost in revenue, and as borders remain closed, the effects may be larger than expected. Let's have more details of that in this report.
Business has virtually come to a standstill for Abdul Rashid Fuseni due to the coronavirus pandemic. His arts and crafts shop mainly sells to tourists, but things began to take a different turn when the government started restricting travel into the country to curb the spread of COVID-19.
No tourists, no visitors, so our business here is running slow, very, very slow. No one comes. You can be in a shop even from Monday to Friday, no one will come.
Tourism is the fourth largest foreign exchange contributor to Ghana's economy. Last year, the government launched a campaign, the Year of Return, which saw African diaspora coming to Ghana to mark 400 years since the transatlantic slave trade. It generated $1.9 billion for the country's economy. Now, major hotels and tourist attractions, including slave castles, have all been kicked out of business due to the pandemic.
The way the Year of Return actually took place and the numbers that came in, we were expecting that this year would even exceed that of last year. So for COVID-19 to come in at the time it came for us to shut down completely, it's been very devastating.
Last year, tourist arrivals increased by 45% on the year before, according to the Ghana Tourism Authority. The International Tourism Organization says arrivals could decline between 20 and 30% this year due to the impact of COVID-19. And while Ghana's airspace and land borders remain closed, shops at this art center in Accra are not likely to see an improvement in their sales. Ghana's tourism ministry is estimating a $171 million loss in revenue. The government says it will support businesses affected by the pandemic with a $9 million grant secured from the IMF. But Fuseni says the support from the government is only half of the solution.
If airlines and tourists are allowed to come into Ghana once again like how it was, then I can say it will bounce back again. Business will still go up and then the tourism sector will also boost up again.
For now though, it is uncertain when the country's airports will open for international travel. Experts say it could take up to 3 years for Ghana's tourism industry to fully recover from the shocks caused by the coronavirus pandemic. By then, craftsmen like Abdul Rashid Fuseni could be out of business altogether.
Well, viewers, there, of course, with that report there in Accra, Ghana, we finally brings this news bulletin to an end. But for more details of this and other stories, you can also look on our website on africa.tv. Well, once again, many thanks for the pleasure of your company. Thanks for watching. Stay safe and bye for now.